Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining today. We're excited to have this webinar talking about the mobile marketing strategy and how to use product analytics to really benefit your marketing teams and marketing efforts. We're going to get started here in just a couple of minutes. If you do have any questions throughout, we'll give some instructions there. We also are going to be recording this as well. So if anybody wants to get a recording of this to share with their teams afterwards or needs to jump off, feel free. As we were just saying, a bit of housekeeping before we get started. If you do have a question, please use the Q&A widget at the bottom of the Zoom window. We are not going to be using the chat feature. So if you do have a question, please make sure to use the Q&A feature. And if you're having any technical difficulties, just a pro tip, try refreshing your browser. That tends to resolve a majority of issues. But as we said, this will be recorded. So if anything happens, you will be getting an email with a link within a few hours. Wait just one more minute and then we'll be getting started. All right, I think we're going to go ahead and start. Thank you again, everyone, for joining today's webinar on the mobile marketing strategy and how to use product analytics towards those goals. My name is Jenna Lindberg. I'll be your host for the webinar today, along with my panelist fellows here, Sophie Hallett, who's the CMO from Banken, as well as Christian Eckhart, who is the CEO and co-founder from Customlytics. We're really pleased to be able to speak with you today and share a little bit of insight about the topic at hand of how you really should be using product analytics and marrying that with your marketing efforts to have a robust mobile analytics strategy. So a little bit about my background. I'm a senior relationship manager at Mixpanel. I've been working in Europe since we opened our first offices here about 3 years ago. As you can tell, I'm American, but have been working extensively throughout Europe and Asia throughout my career. And started my career at Mixpanel as a customer success manager. So really diving into the product and helping customers adopt Mixpanel and use it efficiently across all of their different teams to get the most out of their data analytics strategy. So sharing a little bit about today to set the stage before I hand it over to Sophie and to Christian to give a different angle on this, I wanted to just share a bit about the philosophy of why a marketing team would be interested in a product analytics tool. And it might not be real intuitive, actually, that the marketing team would be a core user of a product analytics tool purpose-built for the product teams. But what I found through the years of working with various customers is that really sophisticated teams have a really joint strategy between these two core engines of their business, between product who's building and optimizing the user experience and listening to what is good for the customer, and the marketing team who's driving that interest in bringing people to the table to consume and do those business activities that keep the lights on at the business. So why do these two different teams typically buy different tools and look at different analytics? What we really see is that they sometimes don't necessarily have that joint strategy at the beginning. They really have worked in silos. And the companies that have been really successful and done really well with a mobile marketing strategy understand that the journey of bringing a customer to the table, acquiring a customer, engaging that customer with messaging and emails, doesn't actually end just because they've opened that email or because they've clicked through to the product and signed up. The real journey of that customer continues onward. And that's the work that product analytics tools really help you understand in detail, not just the activities that are those first interactions, but what is that lifetime value of that customer? What's the frequency in which we see them? How do they use the tool? And this leads to the point that actually really does matter to the marketing teams is who is our best customer? And this is an activity that marketing teams really have done as a core activity for years, doing persona analyses, understanding precisely who is your best customer and how much they cost to be acquired and to maintain. So how do we actually get better at acquiring customers that are the best customers and good customers for our business? And this is one of those core driving activities for marketing teams. And through my experience of working with customers in every industry, when product teams and product analytics tools are married to the data sources from things like attribution and engagement, you can understand not just, hey, did this customer from any of these channels that marketing brought in really do that activity, but did they come back and do it again? And did they become that best persona and that best customer over time? So this is one of the ways I've seen product and marketing teams really work super well together. And if you can bring those data sources from attribution partners, from your pay-per-click advertisements, from any of your different acquisition sources into Mixpanel or any of your product analytics, you're going to be able to simply and easily build out those cohorts that are dynamic, that show customers that end up doing the right type of activity that are scalable to grow your business and to drive the right type of business activity for your products. So that's kind of the basis of why I see marketing really be a core user for companies that are willing to join those strategies together of something like Mixpanel. The second thing that I see as a use case often with customers in a variety of industries is that they're looking at pretty high level statistics for engagement strategies rather than looking at real downstream outcomes. And so the marketing team might have, a webinar that they invite lots of users to, like you all are here today, and have leads that are coming in, and potentially they then sign up. So the conversion metrics that the marketing teams are focused on from those engagement activities are, did the user attend? And then did they actually convert through that single step of doing the one activity? But what we don't know is, then did they go on to do something else? Did they become that perpetual user? Did they become our best customer? Did they sign up again? Did they increase, their subscription with your company? Or did they go on to purchase that item that's in their cart once we sent them the reactivation message? Something like product analytics can really not just look at that single high-level open metric or the singular engagement metric, but actually allow you to look downstream to see, did your engagement strategy work long-term? And are you investing in the right channels to optimize your offerings and spend your money as a marketing team really wisely? So those are the two ways that I really see marketing teams getting the best benefit out of a product analytics tool like Mixpanel, where they're not just looking at open rates and immediate conversion, but the long-term value of the customer and driving the right business outcomes for their product team. So that's possible today with something like Mixpanel because we have integrations and open APIs where all of that data can be brought in and married to the user's click activity and what they're actually doing in your product, so that everything that they do has that interesting granular information about where they came from and what message they might have opened previously. So you can really answer the question as a marketer, did this actually work? So those are some of the things that I would encourage anybody that's on the call that's either a product practitioner or a marketer to think a little bit more about how marketing and product data can really enrich each other and how you're driving joint outcomes and pointing towards the same KPIs of really lifetime customers. I'm going to let you talk to somebody else that actually does this on a day-to-day basis and get a little bit more of the tactical knowledge of what it looks like if you are a marketing professional to be able to daily use data to make really sophisticated decisions and drive your product forward. So I'm going to hand it over to Sophie now, again, the CMO from Bankin, to give you a little bit more information about her experience working with data and how she's run a data-driven team at Bankin. Sophie?
Hi, hello everyone. Thanks, Jenna, for the introduction. So I'll quickly start to telling you a bit more about what we do at Bankin and Bridge, so you get a bit of more context of the environment I work in. So Banking is the leading mobile app in Europe that helps about 4 million users to make better money decisions on a daily basis. So it goes from how do you make your budget to how do you get a loan to buy your house. And at Bridge, we have an open banking platform. So basically we help you build your product using our API. So we help you connect to over 350 banks in Europe, get enriched financial data, and also initiate payments. So we do have a B2C and a B2B business, but today I'll give you mostly feedback about the B2C business and how do we work in the mobile industry. But if you have like overall question at the end about the B2B too, please feel free to ask. As the slide is saying, I've been using Mixpanel on and off since 2012, but mainly on, and mainly for mobile apps. Why? Because I do believe that you cannot make informed marketing decisions without strong product analytics. And I'd like to share my experience with you around 3 talking points that will be helpful to you. So why did we choose Mixpanel as part of our mobile tech stack? How do we use it every day? And what are our results using Mixpanel? So starting with the first point, so why did we choose Mixpanel? Today we work with a growth framework that's called AARRR, that many of you might be familiar with. I'll just go quickly about it for people who might not know what it is. So basically, it's just that you think about your marketing strategy, trying to get all these letters. So the first A is acquisition. The second A is activation. So it's a metric, a product metric that you determine that actually tells you that if a user does this action, the user has seen the value of your product. So if you're an e-commerce app, for example, it could be that someone bought something on the app. If you're Instagram, it's that someone liked a picture on Instagram. So you have to determine what that product metric is. The first R is retention. So how often does a user come back? Every day? Do you lose users after 30 days, 90 days? The second R is referral. So referral is basically having your customer refer your product and getting more free customer thanks to the existing customers that you have. And the last R is revenues. That is, of course, self-explanatory. So true growth comes from the products. It's something I strongly believe in because, of course, you have to have paid acquisition to increase your growth. But if you don't have strong retention that comes naturally from the products, it's going to be hard to have a profitable acquisition model. So to make the right marketing decisions, you need a great product analytics to build your strategy. So we chose Mixpanel because it allows us to measure the ROI of our users acquisition. So we are a mobile app, so we also have AppsFlyer. A competitor could be Adjust, so it's basically a tool that helps you know that this download comes from your Facebook campaigns or your Google campaigns or your Snapchat campaigns. And we've plugged AppsFlyer and Mixpanel together so that AppsFlyer is actually, the tool that says, okay, this comes from Facebook. And after with Mixpanel, we know what the users are going to do once they are inside the app. So do they do all the actions that we need them to do and our, prediction of a better retention? Do they bring us money? Do they refer to other people? So we follow the whole user's life cycle within Mixpanel. And this way we know which channel is actually the more ROI positive. The second point is that it allows us to prioritize our product developments. So how much is a feature used? It's very important to actually know from a data standpoint because we have 4 million users. So of course we get a lot of feedback and that's always great because it really helps us to improve the product from a qualitative standpoint. But sometimes if you send surveys to users, and I'm sure it happened to you too, you get different answers from what you actually see within the data because you always have bias, as it's a survey and people answer, and sometimes they just want to be nice with you when they answer questions, but actually they might not be using the features as much as they say they do. And also, we are about 80 people now at the company, and of course, some people love a feature, some other will love another. So having the data kind of helps us to make more rational decisions about the product roadmap rather than emotional ones, and also helps us to tap in the features that actually bring us user growth. And also it helps us to measure our retention and spot where we could be doing better. Because as I was saying, to build a profitable acquisition model in our business, we do need to have a good retention, and we do have a good retention, but we keep working on it to improve. And the last point I would say is being able as a business team overall, and in business I would put the product team, to be just autonomous when it comes to data. I know many companies where you need like several data analysts on a daily basis that give you reports of what's happening. Here we have all our reports, we can see them every day, and it's actually very, very easy to use. Of course, we still have the data analysts and data scientists in the company, because there are some data, as we have financial data that we do not send to third-party providers for confidentiality reasons. So we have other tools for that. But for all the main business operations, we can deal with Mixpanel, and it's very useful. And actually, my second point would be how we use it in our everyday life. So in Mixpanel, you can build reports, and that you can actually put after in dashboards very easily. You can also actually broadcast those dashboards on TV inside the company. Of course, like right now, everyone is working from home, so that's not what we use the most, but it's actually very useful on a daily basis. And we use them to know how we are doing on our monthly targets. So basically, like my team, my marketing team is 9 people. I have about 8 people that use Mixpanel on a daily basis, because they follow how we're doing on our acquisition target, retention target, and monetization target, thanks to Mixpanel. We also use it to get alerts. So you can set up a daily email digest from the dashboard. So every morning, you get your reports in your email. That might sound a bit silly, but it's actually very convenient not having to go and see, and having the information comes to you directly. And to give you an example, so we retrieve bank data from our users by connecting to over 350 banks in Europe. So of course, sometimes a bank connector is going to be down because the bank has a problem, or we have a problem. And it can impact severely our acquisition, retention, and monetization. So I need to know right away if a bank is down. So with those email digests, I know, and I can make the right decisions in the morning, knowing if we have to change anything to our current strategy. We also use it. We also use heavily the messages part in Mixpanel. So what is very convenient is that you have all your product analytics, and you have your CRM that is plugged to it, so that you can create your marketing campaigns depending on what your users use in your product, what they are doing, and also what they haven't done to actually send campaigns to reactivate them. And to give you an example, we've just released a new referral program that's called the Golden Tickets. And we monitor the use of the feature very closely to see if it's taking off properly. And we have also created several marketing campaigns using the messages feature to actually promote the release of the feature. So you can A/B test your emails, for example, or your push notifications. And so before doing the actual launch, we A/B tested like 3 different marketing angles to promote the features, to see which one would work best in terms of actual conversion, meaning in terms of people that will actually refer friends. And after, when we had a winner, we chose this one and released the campaign to our 4 million users. So it's actually very easy to be able to have everything in the same platform rather than, you know, taking analytics from different ones and not creating your campaign in another platform. And we also have, for example, coaching programs into the app. So to, for example, help you stop overdrafting. So we create coaching programs to help our users make better money decisions. And we track with Mixpanel how well users are doing within the programs. You know, have they done everything that they were supposed to do to improve their situation? And we can create CRM cycles based on the user's progress to actually, you know, send them email to tell them, hey, have you completed this action? Or you still have 3 steps left to complete the program, for example. And this way we actually help them to achieve their financial goals. Quick word about our B2B business. We use Mixpanel to follow the activity of our clients and to see that everything is working correctly still, you know, in terms of bank connections. And so that if we see that something is wrong, we can quickly communicate with our clients. So it helps us to also monitor which of our products they are using and to be better in terms of customer success. And my last point will be, what are our results? I'm confident that Mixpanel really helps us make better user acquisition, product, and customer success decisions. And as I was telling you, like 8 people over 9 in my team use Mixpanel on our daily basis, and it's really central to our marketing tech stack. And we really use it every day to just make, you know, the small decisions of, you know, what will be our priority today, but also make the overall like budget decisions of, you know, which acquisition channel we are going to most invest on this year or this trimester. And as we are also working on our retention, you know, in the long run, that also helps us to have the analysis in the long run to make the best decision possible. And also Mixpanel provides every year studies, you know, by industry that help you see how you're doing actually compared to maybe competitors. So that's also useful content that help us see how we are doing and how we can be improving. So that will be all for me, and I'll now be handing over to Christian from Customlytics.
All right, thanks so much, Sophie. Hello, everybody. So this is for tuning in. Hope you're all safe and sane in those crazy times. So I'm Christian. I'm the co-founder of a company called Customlytics. Short history of my life. So I've started as a performance marketing guy at Delivery Hero, which is online food delivery, so managing campaigns in the early days of mobile apps. At some point, I think just realized that the technological aspect is more interesting, and that's also now kind of what we do today with Customlytics. So we provide consulting and hands-on support for all things around mobile marketing and technology. So it's a full stack consultancy for mobile, if you want to call it like this. We do, invest a lot of thoughts into mobile marketing infrastructure, which is what we will talk about today primarily. And yes, we're also a Mixpanel partner. So Mixpanel is one of the tools that we use in client projects. And so we've already heard very interesting stuff from the other two, and I will pick up a couple of points that we've already heard, I think primarily from Sophie on the mobile marketing tech stack, which we will talk about in a second. So my part is split up in 2 pieces. In the first part, I will talk you through what we see or what we think is a good technological mobile app. So what kind of tools, but also techniques or technologies do you need to successfully run an app business and successfully promote an app? That's going to be the first part. And then the second part, I will walk you through a step-by-step guide from real-world client projects where you can see which steps are necessary to integrate a tool like Mixpanel or also another product analytics provider, and really go through there and mention some of the frequent errors and try to give you some practical advice that you can maybe take with you for your daily work. So if we move on to the next slide, please. Great. So what you're looking at right now, this spider net looking like chart. This is what we call the mobile marketing tech stack. It's something that we came up with based on client projects that we've done and that we still do. And you can see it a bit as a blueprint of a combination of technologies and tools, as I said, that we see over and over again with successful app businesses. And also to some degree, of course, what we would recommend you to do when it comes to, okay, which tools do I even need for my app? And how do they all fit together? So if you look on the color coding here, and I will quickly explain what it's about. You will see that the purple box, this is essentially your app. That's the product. That's obviously the core part of everything. I think, yeah, not much more to say on that. And then in red, what you see is tools or I guess activities even that we would count, or that we see typically more on the product side of things. So this is typically more what the product teams are interested in. So the analytics provider that you see there in red is the product analytics provider, very often a tool like Mixpanel that is primarily used by the product people in most cases, but also interesting for marketing, and I will get to that in a second. What you see in blue then is what we would typically kind of recognize as being more on the marketing side of things. So there you have tools like an MMP, which stands for Mobile Measurement Partner. This is the tools that you need to identify the source of an install. So as Sophie already mentioned, they're using AppsFlyer. There's also others in the market, Adjust, Branch, and a couple of more. This is a typical marketing tool. This is what marketers need to run their paid ads and to judge on campaign performance and quality of the traffic. Then on the right-hand side, there is the mobile CRM provider. Typically, that's another tool. This is the part where you think about, oh, now I have all those users in my app. How can I talk to them? How can I communicate to them? This is, if you think about it in a practical manner, this is stuff like push notifications or also mails that you would send to a user, typically controlled by some kind of external tool. And then there's deep linking on the top, which is not even a tool, it's just something that you have to do. And that's kind of the main marketing pieces here. And what you can see from that chart already is that there's a lot of like data flows going on. And also an important point here to mention is that, well, this is just a blueprint. In a lot of cases, functions that we show as different boxes here can be combined in one tool. I think Mixpanel is a prime example of that. Or they serve for another function. So when you look at the blue pieces here, and you see that a lot of data flows are coming to that central marketing data warehouse here. And then there's data visualization on top. Well, as you've heard from Sophie, in her case, that is mainly happening in Mixpanel. So if we would rewrite that, then all the data kind of arrows would go to the analytics provider. So again, this is just a blueprint. Also, there's no two client setups that would be the same. But we think that this is a good point to start and shows a lot of the aspects that you need to do. Didn't talk about the green stuff yet. The green stuff is not even tools anymore. The green stuff is more like marketing activities and app store optimization that you have to do. I think not too relevant today. So two, I think, last important points to make here is that if you want to think about it, the MMP is in a lot of cases something like the marketing analytics tool. This is where the marketing people look into. And then the red analytics provider box, the product analytics tool, is very often in a different, set in a different kind of tool, which is a bit of a problem if it's like this kind of data silo story, which is why it's important to have that one central place where all the data flows to, that you put the visualizations on top. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that now that we will talk more about the product analytics side, typical questions that you would be looking to answer, as we've already heard from Sophie, with a tool like Mixpanel or a product analytics tool, would be something like, okay, how does a user navigate through my app? Where do the users leave the app? How long do they stay inside of the app? how do they interact with the app, which buttons do they click, on which screen do they stay for a longish period of time, or where do they drop off? Maybe I have to do something on the user experience at that point. This is the typical questions that you would try to answer with a product analytics tool. And then very important last point before we move on to the next slide is that we with Customlytics, we don't develop any own proprietary tool or software. It's a typical question that always comes up with, it's like, oh, that's all super interesting. So how can I integrate the Customlytics SDK? There is none. We do consulting on all the tools that are in the market. We help selecting the right one and integrating it, but we don't develop any own tool. Important point to make, because talking so much about the technology side typically leads to some confusion on that. Having said that, we can now move on to the second part of what I wanted to show you. And that's the step-by-step guide on how to integrate a product analytics tool. So what you're looking at right here is a very condensed, very compromised version of how a project would look like if we do it with a client to integrate a product analytics tool. And I will kind of walk you through the steps and try to, just move, give you some hands-on, I guess, guidelines on typical errors that occur, what to do, what to not do, stuff like this. So it all starts with the step number one, which is collecting the requirements. Requirements in that case means requirements from your business. So you go there and you say, okay, why, what are we even looking for? What do you want to do with a tool? What are the questions you want to answer? How does it all fit together? This is where you also typically set out and do an analysis on what's available in the market. Very important here is to already involve all the relevant stakeholders, as we've heard in the beginning from Jenna, so that this whole, even if it's product analytics kind of tool integration, this whole exercise is not becoming a product team only exercise, so that you are involving the marketing team. Sometimes even the management guys have something or a say in some dashboard that they want to have. So step number one is really collect all those requirements, compared against what's available in the market. What we would typically do, there's a little benchmarking. Sometimes there's factors that are a bit well, non-negotiable, like, hey, where's the data stored? It has to be stored in the EU, something like this. So this is the part where you would put all of that together and then select the right tool for you to use. And then obviously deal with all the legal and contract stuff. Then we move on to step number two. Even before the integration starts, there are two very important steps for you to take so that everything goes well and you end up with a solution that does what you want it to do. And that's step number two is the first part of the preparation of the integration. It's defining all the relevant app events and parameters or attributes, different names for the same thing, for the integration. So that is going there, thinking about, okay, this is my app. What can users realistically do inside of the app? What kind of information do I want to track? Which kind of events have to be there so that I can answer the questions that I have with the tool that I'm integrating. Parameters that describe a user further. That's all things you have to think about at this point. And then how that typically works is that you put it in some kind of matrix, spreadsheet, whatever, or how we would do it. And again, this is typically an effort between the marketing and product teams doing this together, given that both will use the tool in the end. And then we get to step number three, which is, I think, overlooked very oftenly, or it's I guess, one of the biggest causes for trouble with the integration. And we would always recommend doing it. It's one of the core elements of our service. It's creating a detailed integration manual for the developers when you provide them with the task of integrating the tool. So this is, think of it as a really text document that you format a bit like a product ticket. So it starts with a motivation of why you want to have this tool integrated. So I, as a marketing manager, want to have Mixpanel integrated because I want to answer this, and that question. And then it moves on and comes to the kind of more important points, and that is you list all the tool features that you want to use. You set clear expectations on what you want the developers to do, so that in the end everything works just as you expected. And you put together acceptance criteria, so that there's a clear kind of sign off in the end of, okay, this is exactly what I wanted. Acceptance criteria, for example, would be the Mixpanel SDK is running inside of the app when it's launched. All the events that I've listed are tracked with the correct triggers. This would be in there. That helps immensely with getting to your desired result, which is a proper tool integration. What we see happening way too often here in step number 3 is just mail being sent to the developers, being, okay, we want to integrate this tool. Here's the online documentation. Please read and integrate it. Well, that leaves so much room for interpretation that will almost lead to funny results. Then there's step number 4. It's kind of self-explanatory. Step number 4 is the actual integration by the app developers. So this is the point where they would get to your prepared integration manual, but also to the list of events and parameters that you want to track. Ideally, they follow exactly what you've put down and integrate the tool into the app. Well, yeah, that's that. Step number 5, also not done very oftenly, but also something we would highly recommend, or we would always do in a project, is run a manual QA of the tool integration to verify that what the developers have done is what you wanted them to do. Especially in cases where there's a ton of events and a ton of user actions that you want to track. Stuff can just go wrong. People do mistakes, and it's the worst thing to happen that in the end you look at all your nice dashboards and 2 of the events are throwing numbers that don't make any sense, and you have to go back to what has been done on the app side. So that's all pretty nasty. So what you want to have here is to run a QA, manual QA, which is you sitting down using the app, looking at the data that's coming into, in this case, Mixpanel, verifying that that's all correct and that's all according to your specification. Typically done by, oftenly it's done by if it's a more technical marketing person, can be done by the marketing person. Otherwise, often it's also the product person, or something that obviously that also we would do. Very important to get to get a high level of trust into the data of that new tool that you're just integrating. And then we get to step number 6, which is, now the hard part is over. So step number 6 is actually you setting up the dashboards in the tool. Once you know that the tool is integrated properly, you know that you can trust the data, you know that the amount of events and screen visits, whatnot, that you see in the tool can be trusted, then you go ahead and actually build the dashboards to answer all the questions that you came up with in step number 1. And this is kind of where the loop closes. And yeah, I hope you could take away some practical tips here for your everyday work. And I think then handing it back over to Jenna for the Q&A section.
Thanks so much, Christian. And thanks, Sophie. I really appreciate both of your talks and comments. And hopefully for everyone on the line, it was helpful to understand a little bit more from people on the ground, both in kind of a consulting role as well as a leadership role, how they recommend you look at mobile marketing analytics and marrying that with your product analytics strategy. We're going to go to Q&A here. So for the next few minutes, if you do have any questions, please feel free to add them into the Q&A section. Again, the chat is not working at the area that we will be able to see them, so please add them to the Q&A. If you do need to go, feel free to jump off. And as we've mentioned, we will be sending a link around to everyone who signed up via email with a recording, so feel free to share with your colleagues, or if you want to go back to any of the great tips and use cases from Sophie and from Christian. It looks like right now we actually don't have any additional questions. So Sophie and Christian, you guys stunned the audience. We're very thorough.
I think there is one now.
Yep, I see a new one just popped up. So we have this question from Roland, thank you, saying, I worked with Looker, which is a BI tool. How can Mixpanel be an added value with a tool like this in place already? Thanks so much for the question, Roland. I think I'm actually going to lead this to Christian, because I know that you have some experience in identifying what is the right tool for the various activities that you're trying to do as a company.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to take this one. Looker, as we see it, is and I guess probably also as you use it today, is more of that final visualization piece that you put on top of some data. Doesn't really matter what data it is, to visualize whatever you kind of have. However, Looker itself is not providing the tracking functionalities or the other stuff that, for example, a Mixpanel SDK would do. So how we see that fitting together, and that's also not limited to Looker. It can be any visualization tool. We use Tableau a lot, for example, in the company. Is that you would be looking into, okay, how can I extract or transfer the data from Mixpanel to Looker, which is perfectly possible via an API. And then I guess this is probably more of a, okay, I want to use Looker potentially because you already have other dashboards built in that, I don't know. And then just have my Mixpanel data living inside of it as well. That's perfectly possible. There is an API connection that you can use. In Looker, however, I think this, yes, that happens in projects as well. I think it's probably a more advanced use case though. Well, I guess most, maybe you can say something about it, Jenna, but I guess most Mixpanel users are using the Mixpanel dashboard today for their reporting purposes.
Yeah, I agree with you, Christian. So Roland, and some experience that I've had with various customers is that a BI tool certainly will allow for some very complex visualizations where Mixpanel certainly in our dashboards has a bit more of a fixed format from our core reports. But one of the big advantages and why you would potentially have space for both, and for example, Mixpanel ourselves use both Mixpanel on a daily basis and Tableau on a daily basis, is really the user interface and being able to pull insights on the fly as an individual user without being an expert in SQL or building really complex queries. So most of the time, if you're going to build a complex funnel visualization in a BI or various visualization tool, it's going to be quite an investment, and you do need to be an expert in that technology to do that. Where something like Mixpanel is allowing everybody, whether they are fluent in a specific query language or not, to be able to answer those questions themselves and build reports and dig deeper after questions and kind of follow that lead of the insight that you get. And being able to do that very quickly and really enabling everyone in your team to get those answers rather than bottlenecking those insights behind a request that goes to an analytics team and sitting and waiting for 2 weeks to find out if that message that you sent out actually worked. And so especially for things like marketing campaigns and analytics connected to them, you can't wait for that kind of insight. And I don't know if anyone else has experienced this kind of pain, but if you're waiting for someone to build you a report and then they do something wrong, you then have to put in another ticket to be able to change one or two different aspects, where with something like Mixpanel, you're able to go in and make those changes really easily and really just get that instant insight. So it removes that bottleneck. And in a lot of cases, I don't know if Sophie, you have experience with this, but it allows you to free up those analytical resources to do something maybe more granular or more complex, and allows those resources to be better utilized at the company, rather than making them go after, the statistics of your messaging campaign. So that's one of the examples of how most of our companies use them in tandem, and find that there's really a space for the daily product analytics type of visualizations and tools, as well as a BI tool or visualization tool. Sophie, if you have any comments on that, you're definitely welcome to share as well.
Yes, I totally agree. I think autonomy is really important to be able to make quick decisions that will have a positive impact on your marketing and growth strategy overall. And if I may add, if you have a BI, it's great, you know, to have your maybe reports and to be able to do complex queries. But you know, in Mixpanel, you also have the messages feature that, you know, doesn't exist in EBI. So in the messages feature in Mixpanel, you're going to able to be creating CRM cycle based on the user's journey. So saying, you know, if that user hasn't used this feature in that long, we're going to send those messages to them. And this is, you know, one of the advantages of Mixpanel, because you have everything under the same tool. And so you can also analyze, as Jenna was saying, the impact of your marketing campaign. But it's not just, you know, analyzing, it's just being also able to set up the marketing campaign based on your results right away, and to set them up, you know, they are just set up forever, so they just run and you can just analyze the results.
Thanks so much for that insight. It sounds very similar to many of our other customers as well. I do have two questions right now that are both pertaining to COVID. So I'm going to actually bring them together, one from Anonymous and one from Vuk. Thank you so much for your questions. The question is, how is Mixpanel helping you right now with the COVID situation? And the second being, how have you seen COVID-19 change your marketing and analytics strategies? So, you know, Sophie, I don't know if you have any specific information about maybe how you're thinking about data and understanding your user behavior based on, you know, the changes we're seeing in the market due to this, you know, unprecedented situation, but
Sure.
also maybe how Mixpanel data, like what are you actually using to understand the changes?
So of course, like I think every company, we've adapted our marketing strategy to the current market situation. So about the analytics in general, about the COVID crisis, we, as you know, we have many financial data. So we are actually releasing a survey tomorrow of how the COVID has impacted our users' revenue and spending patterns. So this is not something that we've done with Mixpanel Analytics, as we do not share financial information to Mixpanel, but this is a survey that we will send thanks to the Mixpanel tools directly. And we've created with Mixpanel a lot of content COVID related, you know, to help our users manage their finances in this current situation. So we send campaigns with Mixpanel like every 2 days to provide content to our users. And of course, as we have our complete, you know, ROI analysis into Mixpanel, we were able to cut some of our acquisition channels pretty early on as we saw the cost rising. And we saw, you know, like many apps, just a lower engagement in the first weeks after the lockdown in France, especially. So we were able, you know, to just cut some of our investments, waiting for the crisis to just slow down a little, and to be able to reinvest differently afterwards.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I'm assuming everyone is hungry for information, and trying to get powerful content out to your users is incredibly important at a time like this. I do have a couple of other questions as well. That one is specific around the technology Firebase. So the question from Victor, thank you, is, has anyone here used Firebase? And what would you say are the clear advantages Mixpanel has over Firebase? Christian, I'll point this one to you, but Sophie, if you have any specific experience, please feel free.
Sure.
And just wondering, Christian, if you have any insights into your customers that are looking to do more than what Firebase has to offer.
Sure. So to the first question, has anybody here used Firebase? Well, statistically, probably more than 50% of you have used Firebase because it has a crazy market coverage, but also related obviously to the, well, very deep integration with the Android operating system and the fact that you need it for a ton of things like push notifications. Although I think you're referring to Firebase Analytics and how that compares to a paid tool like Mixpanel. Well, so Firebase is widely used, as I said, partly because it's free, or essentially free, partly because it's so much tailored towards, I guess, developers. who in the end are, the ones that can pull the trigger and just go there and be like, oh yeah, okay, I integrated because I take that decision. It tries to do a lot of things. It does do quite a few things kind of okay, good to well. However, it doesn't really stand out to be really great at anything. That's kind of our take at it. So more specifically, if you're talking about the analytics side of things, so yes, if you integrate the Firebase analytics piece or like the SDK, you do get a very I mean, now they've put it together again, but yeah, it's a very Google Analytics style kind of dashboard and tool that you get. I mean, you can even view the data in GA now. However, like whenever we try to dig deeper into it, we kind of quickly get to a point where we see limitations that, well, are just not there with some of the, more like upper market solutions than like a Mixpanel. And that's kind of the point where like you don't get any further with the dashboard anymore, and then you're at the point again where like, oh, okay, well, then I just have to export the raw data to my Google Cloud BigQuery instance and then do the calculation on the raw data anyways, which is not what you're looking for with a tool like a Mixpanel. So I think yes, there are quite a few limitations on the tool side. As I said, okay, good quality in a lot of areas. I mean, Firebase does a ton of things, from push notifications to the analytics piece to remote config and A/B testing. And well, yeah, I guess that leads us back to the most common sentence of project work, which is, well, it depends on the case. If you are using a lot of the other features that Firebase has to offer, then, well, it might be worth looking into the analytics part as well. But we always figure that from a dashboard perspective, it just is a kind of limited tool for the analytics side, which is better with some of the paid solutions in the market.
Yeah, I share Christian's opinion, and if I may add, we also use Firebase, but it's more our mobile team that uses it to monitor kind of the product quality. And if we have some crash and we have some mobile metrics that we follow every day to ensure the quality of the app. So it's more a tool that belongs to our mobile team internally.
Absolutely, because the didn't mention that. Absolutely. So the crash and performance tracking side of things, so what was called Crashlytics before Google acquired it, that is very solid. That's widely used by developers to figure out when the app is crashing and how it is crashing, and that's definitely a solid and free part of Firebase.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question from Manel as well about Firebase, about can Mixpanel be helpful for getting Firebase push notifications data, and whether or not, I'm assuming, Manel, if you get that data into Mixpanel was your question. If it's different than that, please let me know. But to that point, Firebase, this is something else just about their technology, is not incredibly easy to integrate to other technologies, right? Like Google builds products to help initially measure Google spend and advertising spend, and that was purpose built for that. And Firebase has certainly pivoted on that to allow engagement strategies. And as we'd mentioned, some analytics, but not necessarily the depth that you see in other types of paid solutions. So, you certainly, if you want to get that data into Mixpanel is open source, so you can bring that in through our APIs. In terms of a integration, that's up to Google to open that up, and they typically don't allow direct integrations to most other paid tools, partially because there's a bit of a competition there and cannibalism of their own solution and their Google. So if you do extract that data, you can bring it into Mixpanel, but it would require a bit of manipulation. Christian, do you have a different opinion about that?
No, it's like, no, I wouldn't, like, clear answer, I wouldn't bother. I wouldn't bother with that. It's like, I would decide on a solution that does what you're looking for and then go with it. This kind of, looking for a good English word, Flickr solution is the German one. So this kind of, patchwork kind of approach is typically yielding more problems than it solves.
Great. I have 3 more questions here that we're going to try and wrap up before the hour. So we'll kind of take these. And if you have additional questions, please feel free to send them in and we will send you some answers written. But these final 3 questions hopefully will provide some additional insight. This one's for Sophie, and a couple of people are interested in what you mentioned about using Mixpanel for your B2B business and improving customer success activities. And they're asking if you can describe a little bit more about how you're doing things in these specific areas and getting insights at the client level rather than the end user level.
So we have 2 separate projects in Mixpanel for our B2B and B2C activity because we do not mix the data of our B2C users and our B2B clients inside the company too, for confidentiality reasons mainly, and also because there are 2 different activities, so that would not make a lot of sense in terms of operations. So just a bit more context. So at Bridge, we have clients that use our API to build their own products. And after we can, monitor part of the activity of our clients that are using our product within our clients' apps. I hope this is clear. So we use Mixpanel to monitor the product activity of our clients and of our clients. So we have kind of a double view, and just we're making sure with Mixpanel that our the part of the product that we own and that is integrated in our clients' apps is working properly and have good conversion rates, and to help our clients to improve their conversion rates. And that's where our B2C experience comes in handy, because as we've iterated many times on the banking app and that we have 4 million users, we have now we have some solid knowledge on some conversion path, and so we can help our B2B clients improve their own products thanks to the learnings we have from our product studies inside banking. I hope this is clear.
Yeah, it's a good point, Sophie, that most companies that have multiple tiers of customers like you do are looking for insights, not just of the performance of the end users in the app, but maybe each of their clients' performance. And so the way that you built that data and the levels in that data makes a lot of sense. Just maybe to wrap up on that too, something that if you were not aware, the person who sent this in, Mixpanel offers a tool now that's called Group Analytics. So on the the base level, you identify who's the end user and you give them an ID, and you do all of your analysis based on pivoting on that user ID. But just like Sophie mentioned, what if you are a portfolio company, or even maybe like a media streaming example, you have not just the end user that's watching Netflix and clicking play, but also the profiles on an account. So you want to understand that account performance or any level of group ID, not just in a B2B example. And so Mixpanel actually allows you to not track just on a singular end user ID and have to choose. In the same project, you can actually add another hierarchy of another type of group ID and be able to pivot your analytics simply by clicking the drop down from analyzing end user customer activity to that group ID or account level or business level ID. So it really helps you easily do that multi-level analytics, and it's the same interface. So if you're interested in looking into that, it's been really helpful for quite a few of my clients that have multifaceted businesses like what Sophie just described in B2B plus B2C environments. I'm going to ask this one final question. Thanks again so much for everybody who's joined. The question here is about if you've worked with Mixpanel's professional services team, and if yes, could you tell us more about it? And then the second add-on question there is, Christian, how do you guys work with customers and helping them with App Store and online store optimizations? And what's that professional services experience look like? How do you work with them? So maybe the first question I'll lead to Sophie, because I believe you have worked with Mixpanel's customer success team on analytics strategy. And what was that experience like?
Yes, we do have. I mean, we were a kind of bad clients for a while in terms that we were never get meetings with the professional Mixpanel teams that really tried to get us. It's become also easier now that we have a team located in Paris, because we've been using Mixpanel for a long time, even when it did not have a European presence. But even then, we were able to have calls with the SF teams quite regularly when we had a kind of technical integration question. So from my experience, I'm not sure it's how you would present it, guys, but we have like the technical support that we can write, and we usually get answers very quickly. It might be when we think we have a bug, or we have a question on how to use a specific feature within Mixpanel. We can also ask our customer success team. So overall, I think we've been guided quite well. And I think that from my experience, even when I had much smaller accounts back in 2012, I think I've always been able to get responses either from the support or the customer or the sales team to navigate how to use the product and also how to integrate it, because right now it seems obvious to us on how we integrate Mixpanel and how we use it and how it makes sense in our strategy. But I can understand how from if you're starting right now and you don't really know how you're going to start. So Christian gave us some useful insights too. But I think the team is now very, I mean, they have the European presence, they are a large team, so they have the experts that will be able to help you, make the right decisions for your product integration and how to better analyze your own data.
Thanks for that, Sophie. Obviously, I'm a bit biased because I was on the professional services team in Europe, so I appreciate hearing directly from other clients how it looks in the field for you. And I agree that having a European presence and doubling down our efforts and hiring out local teams with language abilities in each market that understand the unique nuances of our markets and the differences of customer behavior in different parts of Europe has been really game-changing for Mixpanel as well. So I'm glad that you guys have experienced that. And then the second part of that question to you, Christian, and the final point was, how do you work with clients and how are you helping customers when they come to you for engagements in their strategy?
Yeah, happy to take that one. So I think that one was more targeting towards the App Store optimization piece, which I'm happy to explain I will try it in 45 seconds. So App Store optimization, yes, very important topic, very different to what we have been discussing today, but still important part of the equation to run a successful app. It's so interesting because the app stores are this natural barrier where all of your prospects or prospecting users have to go through. So it's in your interest to optimize the conversion rate on the App Store page from people visiting the App Store page to people actually installing your app, because every single user has to go through it. And every drop in conversion rate on that page will hurt you on the paid marketing side because you're paying on the clicks and then you have to pay more to get installed, but also on the organic kind of side of things. So App Store optimization pursues two different goals. One of them I already told, that's optimizing the conversion rate in the store. There it's about user expectations. So what you do is you come up with a clear language, clear messaging what the app is about. Attractive and kind of useful screenshots. This is kind of the areas that you would improve for the conversion rate side of things. And then it's the other side of things, which is more comparable to what SEO is for web. And that's the discoverability piece. There it's about keywords and search queries in the stores where you would try to have your app ranking on certain search terms and keywords. And that you typically do with the written elements. So all the text, all the app title, subtitle, short description, long description. By doing a keyword analysis and then optimizing those elements, you try to rank higher for certain keywords, which will in turn will lead to some additional installs that you don't have to pay for, because it's just users that look for something in the App Store. So those are the two aspects of App Store optimization. It's very important. There's much more to it. You can talk about it for days and days, but I think this is the quick 1-minute rundown.
Thanks so much, Christian. And that brings us to the end of our questions. Thanks everyone for your thoughtful questions that you've put in here. Hopefully the insights from Sophie and from Christian and myself have given you something to think about. And with that, we are going to wrap up the webinar. Sophie, Christian, really appreciate you coming today and sharing your insights. It's been really awesome to hear how you are playing out product analytics and the mobile marketing stack in the field. Look forward to learning more from you in the future and working together. And if anyone has any additional questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to us. We will be sending out a link to the webinar recording via email to anyone who signed up. Feel free to share it with your colleagues and with your social networks. We also will be sharing this out on Mixpanel's community, which is Mixpanel's community network that's the QBQ. So you're able to find the recording there as well. Thanks, everybody. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Happy hump day and stay safe at home.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.